this is actually, if you all know, the last week for closing the financial year, and everybody of us is probably highly engaged into ensuring that our funds have been deployed to the last mile and the reports are coming in. But still, I would thank the UBS Forums team for getting the panel here and talking to all of you all and probably share some life experiences. The topic also is very, very interesting, redefining CSR for a better future. Also, I would say very, very broad and generic. Nevertheless, it gives a lot of room to be a little bit more creative. On the panel, introductions have already been done, but if you can see the august presence and a wide variety of experience that we have over here, and of course, a very good gender mix. I first count the number of women on the panel, and usually CSR and development conferences do pretty okay, HR conferences do pretty okay, but I have seen even an all-male panel even in this sector. So again, thank you for a healthy mix of experience, a lot of diversity on the panel, a lot of experience. We have people from across major industries. So again, healthy mix of the sectors that they belong to, or we all belong to, with strong forte in communications and sustainability, managing foundations, in hardcore development and CSR projects. So given that background and the topic, I'm going to just pick your brains a little bit upon today, after 10 years, we are sitting at a position where we're talking about redefining CSR for a better future. And if you look at what has gone in the 10 years and even the history before 10 years, I think substantial change has happened in terms of the way the corporates are looking at CSR, are deploying their funds, running their departments, and collaborating with the corporations. With my own personal experience, because I take a lot of pride and a lot of humility, I say that I have worked in the remotest of the interiors in Jharkhand, and so like with the grassroots, to worked with bilateral, multilateral aid organizations, been a consultant, and now I have ample experience in the corporate sector and running foundations. So given that experience, today we are at a threshold, and we cannot ignore what COVID really taught us. Sometimes we just want to just put blinkers and go ahead and not see, but see change has happened in the way corporates are still functioning, still grappling, IT, industry, investment banks, with the human resource and the potential it has to do so much the better, right? Different mindset. The Generation Z has been opened to a different way of living, to making very different choices, to not being rushed to do something. A lot of corporations are even struggling to see how they can look at that kind of a diversity belt to ensure that there is an integration and we're able to retain. And what better an opportunity to serve the community, to serve the nation, and to stay connected to your corporation and then retain them for a better and a greater future. So we have a massive program on employee engagement and volunteering, which serves as a plank and also a reality pulse for us to check whether we are doing the right things or not. Nevertheless, things are moving at a very rapid pace. The thinking, the availability of the funds with the governments, vis-a-vis with the non-government, and then with the corporates. So where do we play our role when there is a huge sea of funds available, but not to everybody? Then there are well-meaning body of organizations. We also have on the panel, like I said, people from the foundations, how they are engaging, and then the corporations where they are going to be existing for a particular purpose, but also integrating everything into their system. With that, I think I will set the tone with a very important question to a panelist member. I'm going to just take a random pick. I'll have Gauri, who will speak. If any of you all have seen her profile already before joining, she's just not the head of CSR. I think she's created a lot of other initiatives which are very, very intriguing and very, very pertinent for a woman to come in that space and talk about. So apart from CSR, when I'm going to ask you your peak question, I'm going to also add another question to you. Like, I'm a backbencher, so I was doing my homework sitting over here. So your main question is how digital transformation enhances the effectiveness to reach CSR initiatives. It is extremely important because I speak to a lot of people and everybody is saying, and people in important positions are saying that AI and digital transformations are going to make people lose their jobs. And you will need to be completely prepared for that kind of an onslaught. That, given that question, I would also like you, with your vast expertise and academics, how specifically can you talk about it from the gender perspective? Yeah, over to you.
Thank you. And good job sort of like throwing the thing around. Thanks everyone, it's great to be here. And in a lot of ways when we talk about digital transformation, and we've been talking about that a lot this year, Madhura. We've sort of done other panels together. And in a lot of ways, in some ways, it's almost a dated conversation because the linear relationship between the SDGs and digitization has been clearly established. It's also instantaneous. What I think, and of course, it's an internal drive, it's external governance. The way in the last year, the impact, I feel like, has been much more for us internally in CSR. We've always known that, it helps us get content to the last mile. It's helping us, get our skilled workers to e-commerce platforms. It's helping learning, sort of drive knowledge. People can now access it remotely. And so when I say that, I'm not really saying anything groundbreaking. But I feel like for us as CSR, it's helped us become more accountable. Whether it's a sort of dashboard for seeing our data or seeing the fund utilization. All of us are sort of losing sleep, ensuring that we've spent every last penny. To be able to synthesize large sort of data and information to make informed decisions very quickly. I think that's been key for us when we think of our larger programs. How did they do? It's one thing for people to get placed, what is the retention like? And that then helps us sort of think about what can be changed. To kind of bring the gender angle to it, and it's always risky when I start talking about gender because I feel like I sometimes lose track of time. Some of it is so simple and basic that we're still struggling with. We have large-scale digital literacy in aspirational districts. Something as simple as if there is one phone per household, who's going to own it? It's not going to be the woman. And if then she doesn't have access to a phone, her husband does, who's getting the OTP? What are we training them for? So sort of ownership of assets and resources have sometimes, are very slow to change. So that's been one key thing. I also feel like sometimes, and this is a little more abstract and subtle, but visibility becomes problematic. Women sort of sometimes hesitate to put themselves out there or feel the cultural conditioning that makes them very used to being in the back seat. Virtual and online communities require a degree of engagement that's very visible. And sometimes we find that can be problematic. And, since you're talking about the non-CSR things I run a feminist parenting collective. And for me, it came about because I had a kid in COVID, and I remember being like, where is this village that's supposed to help me raise my child? And so Parenthesis evolved as a way to connect, as a support space for new parents who want to have conversations around mindful parenting, feminist sort of conversations early on. And over and over again, we discovered that all conversations have now moved online. So when we are at 52% of internet access in the country, the risk of the 48% that's getting left behind is so much wider. So it isn't just you're not accessing the internet. What does it mean for financial inclusion? What does it mean for access to credit? What does it mean for jobs and employment? So I personally feel like the gender question underscores all our social impact problems. I also feel like if we press that lever, then with that lever, we are moving a whole bunch of other things, right? Whether it's access to healthcare, education. The fact that now women can sit in their homes and get trained for a particular thing, or have telemedicine, or be able to tell somebody about their symptoms, or be able to talk to somebody for a mentorship is enormous. It's got enormous potential. I feel like we're now scratching the surface in CSR to really push that at the last end. So we have things like an app to monitor the work that's happening in the Northeast, to see how much content is consumed. So there's also a lot of work for us in innovating now, to what more things we can do. So yeah, I mean, sort of the short answer is the digital transformation, the catchphrase is thrown around so much, is really poised. With CSR, we're in our adolescence, so we really have now the opportunity to kind of really come into our own as an identity, and we're increasingly professionalizing ourselves. And I think this is where digital access will support us in getting there, that we become another vertical in a company, not just the do-gooders on the edge of the margins.
Thank you, Gauri. Very pertinent points raised there, and I think she covered a lot of areas in which I'm sure Prashant ji, मैं आपके पास आऊँगी अभी. प्रशांत जी, अगेन जिन्होंने अगर देखा होगा और जो जानते हैं, आई थिंक पिछले 3 दशकों से कार्यरत है, 4 दशकों से नारायण सेवा संस्थान कार्यरत है, और उनके लिए एक सवाल है जो मतलब शायद अगर जितना सच हो के सच की भूमिका लेके बता सके, सीएसआर के फंड्स तो बहुत ज़रूरी होते हैं, लेकिन कॉरपोरेट की सक्रिय भागीदारी किसी सीएसआर प्रोजेक्ट के लिए कितनी ज़रूरी है और कितनी व्यापक है और कितनी क्लेशदायक है, ये मैंने जोड़ा है. तो संक्षिप्त में आप बता सकते हैं हमें.
देखिए, प्रश्न बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है, क्योंकि केवल पैसा देना ही सीएसआर इन्वॉल्वमेंट नहीं है. किसी एनजीओ के साथ, उनके साथ जाकर काम करना ये ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है. हम लोग शिविर करते हैं भारत में कई स्थानों पर. विशेष रूप से हमने बैंगलोर में शिविर किया, तो जनरल मोटर्स के 50 लोगों ने शिविर में आकर अपनी सहभागिता दी. मॉर्निंग 6 से रात को 9 बजे तक वो साथ में थे हमारे. पेशेंट को जिस तरह की सुविधा चाहिए वो जुटाने में वो लगे रहे. तो केवल पैसा देना ही औचित्य नहीं होना चाहिए, उस एनजीओ के साथ जुड़कर काम करना. इससे आपको पता लगता है कि पैसे का सदुपयोग सही हो रहा है या नहीं हो रहा है. इससे आप एक दिन सेवा के लिए डिवोट कर पाते हो, ताकि आने वाला आपका भविष्य और सुखद हो पाए. क्योंकि हम लोग जो काम करते हैं वो वस्तुतः स्वयं के लिए करते हैं, किसी और के लिए नहीं करते. लॉ ऑफ कर्मा की थ्योरी जानते हैं आप, कि आप अगर किसी को कुछ देंगे तो कई मल्टीप्लाई होकर आपको फिर से आपके जीवन में मिलेगा. तो अगर आप एक दिन किसी व्यक्ति को अपना समय देते हैं तो पता नहीं उसकी दुआएं आपके जीवन में कितनी काम आएगी. तो मेरा ऐसा सोचना है कि सीएसआर में यदि सक्रिय भागीदारी की जाए, जिस एनजीओ के साथ आप एसोसिएटेड हैं, तो मुझे लगता है वो बहुत विन विन सिचुएशन है. एक कॉन्फिडेंस आता है सीएसआर देने वाली कंपनीज़ को एनजीओ के प्रति कि काम अच्छा हो रहा है या नहीं हो रहा है. वॉलंटियरिंग की पॉसिबिलिटीज़ मिलती है, संभावनाएं मिलती है, जो आजकल देखने से भी प्राप्त नहीं होती. क्योंकि पैसे के लिए, पैसे के पीछे दौड़ना जीवन का लक्ष्य नहीं होना चाहिए. कुछ समय हमें औरों को सुख देने में भी बिताना चाहिए. तो इसलिए मुझे लगता है सक्रिय भागीदारी बहुत आवश्यक है. और मैं आप सब लोगों से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा, 8 जून को वडाला में एक शिविर हो रहा है जिसमें 400 जिनके लिम्स नहीं है, हाथ और पैर नहीं है, उनको लिम्स प्रदान किए जाएंगे, फिट किए जाएंगे. नीको हॉल करके है. अगर आप बॉम्बे में रहते हैं तो आप वहाँ आकर वॉलंटियरिंग कीजिए, अपने हाथों से सेवा कीजिए. और भारत में हर संडे को शिविर लगते हैं, उसकी जानकारी हम आपको दें तो आप भी अपनी कंपनीज़ के लोगों को भेजकर वहाँ सेवा कर सकते हैं. तो मुझे लगता है कि पैसा देना ही औचित्य नहीं होना चाहिए, उसके साथ सक्रिय भागीदारी होना बहुत आवश्यक है.
ये धन्यवाद. I will move on to Deepender. Deepender is with Vodafone. He is heading the CSR and sustainability, and as well as the foundation. So Deepender, the question for you is, what are the key challenges and opportunities while working on the CSR projects, and how do you make them self-sustaining? I think it's very critical to understand that once you get the funds, how long do you get the funds, and how do they remain self-sustaining, because corporates might change their agenda or their perspective. Beyond medium term, I think corporates rarely go for very large term unless you all have foundations and big trusts, but corporates will have that a medium term maximum perspective. So how do you ensure that the projects do become self-sustaining?
So thanks so much, Madhura, and thanks to you at the UBS forum also for this opportunity. And coming on to the question, means it is quite a critical and quite an important question also. And that too after a decade of that the implementation of the CSR. And I will be taking this question means from प्रशांत जी, जो अभी उन्होंने कहा उन्होंने कि ऐसे हम लोग भागीदार हो सकते हैं. So means what I think is that means we should not think in terms of a donor. Means we should think in terms of a co-creator. That too along with the NGO partner means we should have that kind of a relationship or that kind of a collaboration. That it should be look like that both are doing the same work, that in a very cordial way, and it is not like a kind of relationship donor or a donee. So that is one thing which Prashant ji also highlighted, and I means agree with it. And then second point which I see that means how we can make the thing sustain in a long run, which the corporate are doing by funding the that the particular initiative. So one thing is that means we should think in terms of that how we can build the capacity for whom you are working in that way, so that after a 2 or 3 years or 5 years, they can take the ownership and drive the thing on their own. So that is the kind of thing which is still missing in this domain. And many of us, I am sure, means we are trying our best, because we cannot be there forever. Because we also will be doing the things, building the capacity or building the infra to be used by the community, and then move to certain other area, means where we feel that we should go and intervene there also. But side by side, means where we have already intervened, means we should ensure that that can be taken care by the stakeholders or the beneficiary with whom you have worked. So I can cite some example on it, means which we have trying to do, that in collaboration with the Mahila Seva Trust, which is a part of a Seva. That what we have done is that we have built the capacity, or we have created a rural micro-entrepreneur in the rural areas with the help of Seva team. And we have created a center that all the rural women come who are part of the project. They come and process the agro product, finish it, means saaf safai karna, and then package it, and then sell in the rural market, that in the rural area only. So means it is a kind of a thing which is coming from that particular region only and going back in that particular region only. So means initially we had funded that center, we had funded all the project cost, and the larger vision was that in longer run, means after 5 or 7 years, that the beneficiary whom we have created, they will take over the processing center and run it. So that we have been able to do after 5 to 7 years. Now the processing centers are managed by the rural women only, and they are taking care of means all the expenses which are to be met for the that to make the functional of the center. So that kind of thing which we have been doing, and similarly in the education sector also. That suppose suppose if created a rural created a ICT infrastructure in the schools, means we have built the capacity of the teachers, means who are part of the school ecosystem, to means run or manage the ICT center of that particular school. So in that way, that has become the part of the ecosystem in the longer run, and which can sustain in the longer run also. And that will create a larger impact in the long run of the project initiative also. So that are some of the things which we should think of, And while designing the CSR project, means one thing we should take into account is that we should have a clear-cut exit framework. Means for how many years you are going to work there, and what will be the exit strategy. And exit strategy should be followed by the kind of a hand-holding support to the key stakeholders who can take the initiative forward. So that is the thing.
Thank you. Very, very, very meaningful and great insights we got over there. I'm going to now move to Nupur. So Nupur, to just give a background, very few corporates really actually proactively take CSR and sports funding as a priority. At Bajaj Group, we have been funding the OGQ, the Olympic Gold Quest, which is at a very large platform. We have tried also to support Gopichand Academy, to create sporting talent. We went down to one of our group companies where we tried to develop, around the vicinity, because a lot of tribals were there with a very different physique and stamina and strength, to work with the schools in satellite platform to create sporting culture, look at sporting talent and sporting infrastructure. But however, like the corporates do have a little bit of a shelf life where they want to do something and then they want to take up something, because corporate people come and go, right? Whereas non-profits or NGOs generally remain for a longer term. So again, over to you. While you still face the big challenge to see that the funding is low, how would you want to put it in a priority, and how would you like to see that the sports is integrated into CSR activities, CSR programs to promote education and holistic youth development?
Thanks.
Given the background that we are a country which we have nutritional deficiencies in the interior, stunted growth, and all that context.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect context for me to start with as well, Madhura, because the kind of program that you spoke about, when we see sports, we are only seeing it from a talent identification perspective. And I'm happy to also say that we have also just started with Bajaj a program which about sports, but not sports for producing the next Olympian, but sports for holistic education of a child. Now, if I go deeper into your question itself, right, the physical aspects, physical benefits of sports are well established. I think that we're all in agreement with. What goes unnoticed is the profound impact on a child of sports on the non-sports, on the social and emotional aspects of a child, right? Even in this privileged room, right, we as parents are probably struggling with attention span of our child, bullying in schools, non-commitment to certain activity that you give them. But when it comes to sports, every child fails more than they succeed. There are lessons that a child learns on the play field. You can't win a team game unless you interact with your teammates better. These are lives. So, to get sports into mainstream, we need to first think it beyond medals and talent. And I think what we believe is sports is education. Sports is not an extracurricular activity. It is about saying, going from kheloge, kudoge, hoge kharab to kheloge to khiloge. If we believe that, then only I think there is mindshare for this. Otherwise, of course, if we're going to go only for medals, then the share will going to remain so, because of course there are bigger priorities like nutrition. But if we do believe sports is education, which we very strongly believe, and we've seen in our programs, Akansha and I were speaking about how do you measure this in our in-house rubrics that we've created for social emotional learning. We've seen from our programs that kids who are with us participating in structured sports programs in schools are better problem solvers, are more coachable, are taking responsibility, are interacting with their peers better. These skills are, in this century, we don't expect just maths and science from our kids, right? We need them to have these skills to do better in life. And also, to the sustainability point that we had, just want to link that as well, that we've seen success with our beneficiaries being able to secure better livelihood. Our beneficiaries have been, for example, being able to place into UP Police because of their involvement in sports through sports quota. Right? These are, again, from a livelihood perspective, sports has helped them secure a job for a girl. Right? Otherwise, this would have probably not been possible for her at all. Gram panchayats have come forward to support the sports programming once a CSR funder has moved out, creating again livelihood opportunities, fostering community inclusion, community ownership. So yes, I think, long story short, if we view sports from an education lens rather than a talent lens, is when we can think of a child from a holistic education and holistic development perspective.
Yeah. So could you give a little bit of a more concrete example where recently in your projects or in your partnerships this is taking shape now, apart from the names that you took? Any other example?
You mean like donors who have come forward? Yeah, so Bajaj,
apart from that.
So other than that, we have HCL Foundation, KPMG, Latent View. We have about 20 odd donors who have come forward and supporting sport for change, sport for developmental outcomes. Again, Latent View I've mentioned, there is HCL Foundation, Bajaj, Trent has been in talks with them. So lots of funders who've taken this route now.
Yeah. So I think when we're talking about reimagining our future, and especially for our kids, and while we're focusing on a lot of other aspects of rural development, health, I think this for children, to have a better future, should definitely be incorporated in their whole lifespan of growing up, from 0 to 16 years. So I think a very important, work that's happening. I'll move to the next panelist, which is our Ameet Rele, who's just sitting next to me over here. He is the vice president, and he's also dealing with communications. He's working with Nuvoco. So I would like you to delve a little bit more on the obligations and the responsibilities are more with the extractive industries. And there's a lot of give and take that needs to happen even beyond the CSR domain. And so the on-ground realities, and how CSR can play a bridge, or how your companies has supported, like beyond the work domain or beyond the kind of requirements that are obligated by EIA or whatever it is, to work with the communities in times of crisis, or has demonstrated some intangible benefits that are just not basically for number crunching or whatever in the work that you have.
Yeah, thanks, Madhura. And hello to all of you. I think we are trying to hit a very pertinent question over here. As large format industries, as you rightly mentioned, extractive, those are involved into mining, resource planning, how do they typically get into? So I belong to a cement industry, and a lot of work happens at an infrastructure level. Cement, as you all know, is, typically comes from Mother Nature. So everything that happens in cement happens from the Mother Nature perspective. And when you are involved in this, and when you are involved in nature, people, of course, become a center point when you are dealing with them. Yeah, because you have mining, you have manufacturing, you have resource planning, and legalities and crisis are involved with all of it at each point of time. What happens in this case particularly is such commoditized businesses and large format businesses become responsible for overall community development and enriching from their growth perspective, because our engagement at these locations is not short term. When we are working with them, we are working for a 3 or a 4 decade plan. That's how we work for them. Yeah, we see generations growing up when we are seeing it with them. So of course there are a lot of legal frameworks that come into perspective when we say, and also crisis which will happen over a period of time. Like for example, if I have to speak on mining perspective, I think all of us know about mining is one of things explosion, because that's when you have to get your mineral extracts. Yeah. Typically, explosion sometimes has been referred to as there's a movement, the earth shakes, something like a water table moves. Now, when you have a water table movement, it becomes your responsibility that how you give back that water into a circular economy concept back to them. We use coal as an energy. Coal is a fossil fuel. So our responsibility comes back of giving energy and replacing it with renewable sources for these villages to take care, how we have to work with them, and responsible energy that we are going to give, again defining the circular economy concept, because everything is limited that we have. We are responsible overall from education, because what happens is you get lands, you displace people, so education and jobs, that becomes again a circular economy concept when we are dealing with these people. Yeah. Going beyond, if I have to give some examples again, like we are heading into summer now, and I believe a lot of news reports we have already seen about, the harsh heat wave that's been hitting us. In fact, reports have been doing, and to tell you, in central India, the panic button has already been pressed. There are people in central India, it's facing one of the early heat waves. The water shortages have gone below thresholds, and the requests from communities and governments have already started coming in this regard. How do you manage water? So climate change is right here. We are all seeing how the water management resources. We are already talking with the respective governments in the areas that we operate. How can we ensure water supply not just to the people, but also to the animals in the region? Because livestock are a way they earn their money. That's their economic centrifugal point. So it's not just about people, it's about other living beings who are living in these areas as well. So it's a very large landscape that we talk about when we deal with nature, where we deal with people, where we have to balance out expectations for not just a very short frame of time. So in a nutshell, what we try to do is we try to work around skill so that we can give them income levels for a sustained period of time and increasing quality of life. We provide them energy resources so that they can run their household in a better way. And we also look at into developing them in forms of infrastructure, because that's the base expectation as a player. Into Seaman, the base expectation is you develop any infrastructure, could be a school, could be taking care of, the entire mission where we want to make it a disinfectant free. So you construct toilets, not just in the schools, but also outside. So these are some of the movements that we look into. Large format healthcare, where again infrastructure plus aids are coming into. So that's another area that we strongly work into. So community, crisis and care. This is what we work hand in hand to ensure that there is a sustainable development in these regions.
Interesting. I think very frankly put, because, we don't really target sector-wise, but giving in this kind of a perspective where all these factors need to be taken in for planning a program or doing it and getting the outcomes ready. I will now move on to the last panelist, maybe saving the best for the last. When all this work that's happening around and given the different nature, different tonality of the corporations, of the non-profits, of the stakeholders, their wishes, their approaches, communications plays a very key role to bring and hold all this together. And doing too little of it can also give you nothing. Doing excess of it can also kill the kind of all the goodwill that has been created. So in that context, I would like you to set the tone for what kind of role corporate communications will play in aligning CSR with the local community needs, keeping the sensibilities in minds and the non-profits and probably the SDGs in the present and in the future. Because the newer generations need to know a lot, need to understand a lot, need to see a lot. While traditionally and even corporations exercise a lot of caution, especially in communications where they don't have a direct control. And the communities and stakeholders beyond their territory becomes a little bit of a difficulty for them. So how do you foresee this in the present and in the coming years?
So let me kind of pull back with us quite a lot of points. So corporate communications and basically its role with CSR, that's first the point that I'll address. So corporate communications, as most of you would understand, is essentially the team that defines what's your brand's purpose, the tonality, how do you connect that with your audience, the various stakeholders as you talked about, right? So your stakeholder is the local community, it's the government, it's your customer, it's everybody and anybody who needs to know your brand and why do you exist. So corporate communications is always building the brand for you and ensuring that you're talking to the right people, you're having the right messaging. So in the context of CSR, and why am I talking about corporate communications? Because I wear a dual hat. I also handle corporate communications, I also handle CSR. And when I'm talking about from a corporate communications point of view, the way I look at CSR programs is very clearly that, are these programs talking to my brand's purpose? I come from DHL, and we're a logistics company, and our brand's purpose, for example, is connecting people, improving lives. So it's pretty simple when I want to explain it to a customer, right? If you need a shipment delivered, it'll come to you between 24 to 48 hours. I'm making that connection for you. Now, when it comes to CSR, right, it helps me create that kind of sandbox. It gives me a template of what are the brand values that I want to make sure that connect back to my brand. And so, for example, I'll give you, from a logistics point of view, we have a program which runs under Go Help. So it's something which, I think we've heard this term a lot by Michael Porter, shared value proposition, right? Every CSR person worth his salt would have heard that. So the idea is to bring my brand value and knowledge and systems into play through a program like Disaster Relief Team and GUARD, which is getting airports ready for disaster. So what I do essentially through this program is, again, I don't take necessarily CSR money, I take business money, but I put business money to good use over here. I simulate a crisis for various governments across the world at an airport and tell you that if this is a problem that will happen at your airport, are you prepared? So I'm giving you an entire crisis playbook for that. So generally what happens, we've seen this in floods, we've seen this in wars, the first person, everybody will contact a non-profit. They will say, ye le jao, I need this medicine to be dropped off. Fine, you will send boatloads, shiploads, aircraft loads. What happens, everything is thrown onto a tarmac. At the end of it, nothing is reaching your final beneficiary, but as a CSR person, or maybe a board member even, you've done your tick box activity, right? But for a communications person, I will see it, and I can't tell you that story. If I'm going to tell you that story, it's very half-hearted. I'm giving you one side of the story. So generally, as a company like DHL, I want to tell you the entire impact as well. And generally, good CSR people will also ask you, who was it delivered to? So these are both teams which are trying to talk to each other. So when we run a disaster relief program, I work with, for example, in India, during the Kerala floods a few years ago, around 2018 or 2019, I think so. We worked with the Indian Army. We were dropping speedballs, which is nothing but these big bags, which are specially created, where you can pack medicines, food packets, etc., and drop it from the very high altitudes from a helicopter. Simple things like that. Why do I do it? Because I understand logistics. Why do I simulate a crisis during a war-like situation? It's because I know where the forklifts should be. In Sri Lanka, this happened several years ago. They got a lot of, I think during this wartime, they got a lot of medicines, food packets, etc. Everything was put in a warehouse, but they couldn't lift it. Why? Because all 3 forklifts were at the back of the warehouse. How do you move it? It got wasted. So when you're looking at making programs that where you're syncing up with your brand values, I think you are kind of always making sure that the program is ultimately picking up from your shared values, the brand purpose, etc. Now coming back to the stakeholder piece and a little more about why corporate communications is important in this. So we talked about the brand purpose. The other 2 P's is essentially policy advocacy and promotion. Corporate communications teams understand very clearly that most times non-profits, especially younger ones, don't know how to position their impact and the value that they bring into us. And so when you go to a board, they see, okay, there's an output, outcome, all very nice, fancy stuff, but what was the exact impact? Storytelling is something your communications team should help you do. And usually when our non-profits, we run platform level workshops with them and try to bring them to understand why we need that story, how it will help them receive better funding, and then we look at multi-year, multi-level partnerships. So any of our partners, if you speak to them, minimum 3 to maximum 5 years at least we have run. Teach for India, for example, has been more than 10 years. We don't get into a partnership where they are also not able to understand the value we bring to them. And lastly, I think, of course, is the promotion. So as you asked, right, Sports Village, what are the partners that you have? Credibility. We bring a lot of credibility. Why do Corpcom people ask you and chase you for social media posts and press releases? It's because I want you also to raise funds. I can't make the change on my own. I need other partners to come in and help and make the difference. So I move the needle, and I hope I'm making a difference for the non-profit. So I think in that sense, communications is integrated in every piece. And one last example, if I can give, there's a non-profit that works with us with street children and drug rehabilitation. That message was very important for them. And to reach the Narcotics Control Board and telling them where they were getting impacted, how those children were being targeted on the streets, young kids, 2-year-old, 3-year-olds, and what is the policy changes that they needed to make sure that they can pick up those kids and rescue them, was something that we helped them draft and present. And now there are some changes that are coming in. So I think there is a great value in, I think, cross-pollination in general. Yeah, thank you so much.
I think very interesting insights that the panel has given. Since the topic is redefining, our way ahead for the coming decade, I'm just going to sum up with the last question with one sentence each, not more than one sentence I want. Very simply, एक ही वाक्य में हमको बताना है कि अगले दशक हम किस दिशा में जाने वाले हैं. अगर एक innovation और एक shift, one shift we would want to perceive, maybe not in our scope of work because we may be limited to it, but if we want the country to look at itself in the next decade or so to redefine CSR, what would it be? Just one word or one sentence.
So means I would suggest don't create a parallel structure or a parallel system. Be a part of what is existing in the system and try to build on that. That will have a larger impact in the coming days and will also help in sustaining the activity which you are trying to do.
We'll go sequentially.
I think greater governance and regulations around the PR aspects of CSR will really push us to make more better informed decisions.
Yeah.
I think basics remain the basics. So make sure that you are disbursing the money in April. It's not a shift that I'm asking. I'm just asking for the basic. Make sure you disburse it in April and you have your utilization certificates well by the first week of March so that you don't run. That's it.
I think from a monitoring and evaluation perspective, standardized frameworks and indicators to help build more mindshare, better storytelling opportunities for getting advocacy and promotion done.
अगले 10 वर्षों में हमें ऐसे भारत का निर्माण करना है जहां सभी तरह के लाभार्थी या जो कम फॉर्चुनेट हैं वो गरिमा के साथ और सर उठा के आत्मसम्मान के साथ जी पाए.
Yeah, I think I'll circle back to where we started, integrating tech. The world is changing, the impact needs to be measured, and if we integrate tech with care and emotion, I definitely see a larger impact could happen on CSR.
Okay. I think I would like to definitely say 3 things. One is be less bureaucratic, be a slightly more risk-taking, and more assimilative. So with that, since the bell has rung, I would like to thank my lovely panelists for all the contribution that they've done on this forum, and thank you for inviting me to moderate this session. And thank you, the lovely audience. I know the time is up, but if they're around, please, you can pick their brains in the break that may follow. Thank you.